All right, my English teacher friend. So in this video, I want to explore Strunk White's rule number 18 and some of their theories and techniques to get our students to break away from stacking independent clauses atop of each other. Oftentimes, as you know, when we sit down and grade student work, it's a long succession of sentences that go short, simple declarative sentence, short, simple declarative sentence, short, simple declarative sentence, or independent clauses upon independent clauses. Very unsophisticated sort of train track rhythm, da 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 type voice rhythm and flow. So I'm a big believer in the idea that in order to get that elusive sophistication point on the AP exams, that kids need to be able to bust out and wield some complex sentences every now and then with purpose, not just arbitrarily do it, but with purpose. And Strunk and White, in their seminal text called Write It Right, have something called rule number 18, and they make the assertion that there's 12 different ways to cobble together a single sentence. And what I do with my students is I get into the purpose of a sentence. So take independent clauses as an example. Why would you use those? What purpose? Why do good writers use the independent clause? And for me, the answer to that is, the articulation of a declarative thesis would want to be a declarative clause, kind of like, you're pounding your fist when you're you're like a lawyer or a judge pounding the gavel. And then in language of my templates, when students get into the conclusion of their syllogisms, not their conclusion paragraph of the essay, but the conclusion of the syllogistic body paragraph, that's also the place where you want to be pounding the hammer with independent clauses and short, simple declaratives. It's an argue statement, right? It's an arguing sentence. So I tell my students, when you independent clause me, it's kind of like bold capping in a text. It's kind of like you're yelling, you're exclaiming, you're really gesticulating something within terms of your argument. So I have them stick to that independent clause with purpose and with some degree of clarity. So what I'm going to do in this workshop is focus on complex sentences down in like rules number 10, 11, and 12 of rule number 18. In terms of how to cobble together some complex sentences. So let me run through this real quick. This is going to be a quick video. What I do is something called think, pair, square, and I think probably most of you are familiar with this. So I group my desk in a square. So I have a group of 4 students seated together. What they're going to do is revise my mentor sentence and write an original sentence of their own, and then pass their papers or their computers around so that they're seeing 3 examples of how to do a particular complex sentence. And let me give you an idea of this. So remember back in elementary school when you do complete the pattern, you'd have to figure out the sequence, the chronology. This exercise is very similar to that. So I'm going to Bob Ross my instruction, and I'm writing mentor sentences for my students in which I show them how to bust out this particular complex sentence that I want. And in this activity, there are 6 complex sentence strands. And so I have mentor sentences for all 6. So here's the first one. And the rule is the compound sentence with a colon, repetition of a key term in a series. So this is the language coming from Strunk and White. All right, so my original sentence would look like this. To the New York Yankees, much of the game of baseball is to be honored. Winning is honored. Work ethic is honored. The concept that there's no I in team is honored. Even clean-shaven faces is honored. So this parallelism that is in this triggered by that colon, right? So the repetition of the key term in a series. So we're focusing on honored, right? The honored traditions of the New York Yankees. So students in turn will use this mentor sentence as a lead to write their own original sentence and then go back to where we were. They write it and then they pass it around the group. And in this, they can help each other revise, edit, and assist each other in writing that, because this is a hard activity. Some of our students, they come to me even at the AP level. Some of them have only wielded like 2 to 3 sentence constructs out of the 12 their entire academic careers in composition. So in doing this, you also got to get into punctuation. Students need to know how to use a semicolon, avoid comma splices, know the difference between a subject and a verb, dependent, independent clause, and all of that is in Strunk White's Write It Right. And I have a ton of stuff in my YouTube channel that goes over grammar, punctuation, and syntax. In fact, there's a lot of gamified approaches in the YouTube channel to help your students with that, because some of them may have never used a colon before in their lives and might not even know, the purpose of it. So here's another one. Repetition with a dependent clause as an interrupting modifier. So here's my model sentence. Ex-girlfriends are shelved in the past, dash, because they are past tense for a reason, dash, to remind us not to continually make the same mistakes over and over again. So this kind of stutter, stop, start rhythm flow is nice to have in a composition, in a piece of expository writing every now and then. So here's the kicker with this. Sometimes when I get teaching complex sentences, students get of the mindset of, oh, geez, every sentence I write must be complex. No. Those independent clauses are nice. They're good. They're our friends, but you want to sparingly use them. Like simple adjective clauses, independent clauses, short, simple declaratives. We want to see some complexity every now and then, like maybe just a simple parenthetical statement to achieve the voice, the rhythm, the flow. I am a huge believer in the idea, in the concept that a kid's not going to get the sophistication point if they can only wield and like grapple and tussle with 2 to 3 of the 12 sentence constructs. They have to have a pretty good knowledge and alacrity with all 12 of them, at least 8, 9, 10 of them, in order to ascend the rubric at the AP level. And even for on-level gen ed classes, I want my students to be able to do this. So here's one more. A dependent clause combined with an appositive at the end of a sentence after a colon in a balanced series. So my students know the parts of speech. We go over this real extensively in my Nuance Academy. And in my Teach It Right 5-week mastermind, my self-paced course, even some of my one-offs that I do with the National Writing Project, I highlight the ins and outs and the comings and goings of that Nuance Academy. And it's a real intensive course of study that I do with all of my students to shore up the basics of grammar, punctuation, syntax, but also how to achieve voice, rhythm, and flow and complexity, have expressive syntax. I've taught a lot of creative writing over the years. I've published a lot too, poetry, textbooks, and expressive syntax is usually the domain of creative writing, but I teach it in AP Lang and AP Lit. I really think it's important for that voice point, that pizzazz point, the sophistication point, to be able to do sentences like this. So look at this one. A dependent clause combined with an appositive at the end of a sentence after a colon and a balanced series. After a ton of effort and perseverance, I've become the type of person I can admire, a man of faith and family bonds, of work ethic and commitment to self. So students read these sentences all the time in the literature that we give them, whether it be, for rhetorical analysis or literary analysis. But how often do they bust them out in their own writing, right? So that transference concept, they read and therefore they do, is not really working for most of my kids. They need to practice this often and with certain degree of regularity before it transfers into their writing. So I have 6 of these complex sentence series or strands. And here's another one, a compound sentence without a conjunction with repetitive series. Folk singers with crooning voices and just an acoustic guitar always moved Kenneth, semicolon. They made him ponderously melancholic, comma. Music that sang of loss and heartache, comma. Of nature's unifying presence, comma. of the things that move the soul in quiet moments. So again, every now and then, a sentence like this really bodes well for a student in terms of getting their voice, their rhythm, their flow, their pizzazz, their flair, their personality. You couple this with what I talk about in my Word Study Academy in terms of busting out Tier 2 level vocabulary every now and balancing that with the colloquial vernacular, the Tier 2, and by Tier 2 I just mean your average run-of-the-mill SAT level word. And holy cow, your kids are going to transcend the rubric all day long. So that's kind of the whole kit and caboodle of expository writing. Here's another one. Inverted sentence pattern, including a prepositional phrase before the subject. So you can have a verb combination within the compound sentence. So here's one. Just invert it, all right, and then use the semicolon. At the smorgasbord, there were endless dishes of various countries and ethnicities, semicolon. Not a single one did Kenneth dare to stomach. Right? So again, very good sentence flows when my students write, when they're manipulating my templates. It's something that I talk about in all of my videos. And teachers have reached out to me over the years and said, Christian, how the heck do you get your kids to do that? They must be reading a ton. And I think that's one of the great mythologies in ELA is that if kids read and read and read and read and read, that it's going to transfer into their writing. Nope. So I do very focused, concrete exercises to develop and hone those skills. So here's another one. An interrupting modifier that is a standalone sentence combined with a separate modifier. This is a hard sentence to write. I struggled with this one a little bit, but I think I got it. His baseball team, a group of boys who went undefeated for 2 straight seasons, their coach was on the only other team to experience this feat, had been rumored to eat pasta superstitiously before every game. So do you see that between the dashes you have an interrupting modifier, which is a standalone sentence, but it's a parenthetical, right? So in the old days, in the 80s when I was growing up, we would put that in parentheses, and these days we just do it with the dash. So the original elements of style that Strunk White wrote would put that in parentheses, but professional writers really don't do that anymore. So that's that. So 6 complex sentence strands to practice with your students. And again, you can do it in the Think Pair Square or even larger group. Do gallery walks if you want. So you can, bend and twist that however you want. So if you would like these slides and want to try your hand at it, just drop me an email at teachingwritingcoach@gmail.com. And then also in terms of my professional development offerings, note that going forward, everything I do is going to be offered through the National Writing Project. So I've teamed up with them. And my Teach It Right 5-week mastermind, my self-paced course, my one-offs. So every month we're going to do a webinar that's either going to be free or for a nominal fee. So I'm doing like my alternative grading methods coming up, 2-hour intensive, a teaching line of reasoning through children's literature, AP strategies for success. I'm going to do one-offs of the Word Study Academy and the Nuance Academy as well. So if you don't want to do the whole 5-week mastermind and just want a 90-minute or 2-hour intensive, NWP is the place to go. And they are giving completion badges for those that need professional development hours. Usually it's a 2-hour completion badge, but you can bundle things together like the 5-week mastermind, the self-paced course, the AP strategies for success for a total of 12 credit hours if you are in need. So hopefully you found this to be useful. For now, be well, happy teaching, and happy writing.